8 candidates enter a dark, windowless room equipped with security cameras, a timer, and 2 rows of desks facing each other. Each desk has a pencil and a piece of paper labeled with a number, candidate 1, 2, and so on. The candidates take their seats, looking around nervously. They don't know what the test is about. They made it this far through a rigorous selection process, culminating in a final test for a highly coveted job at a mysterious and powerful company. The tension sets in as they wait for the instructions to begin the test. Soon after, an armed guard enters the room, followed by the invigilator, a stern and authoritative man. He explains the rules firmly. The candidates cannot speak to him or the guard. They cannot spoil their papers or leave the room for whatever reason. If they break any of these rules, they will be disqualified. The test consists of one simple question, and they have 80 minutes to answer it. Before leaving, the invigilator asks if there are any questions, but the candidates remain silent. Then, he sets the timer and leaves. As soon as the invigilator is gone, they flip over their papers, looking for the question, only to find nothing. The papers are completely blank. Confusion sets in among them. None of them know what to do. One candidate, a young woman of Chinese descent, starts writing on her paper, but before she finishes, the guard intervenes and kicks her out of the room. She is disqualified for spoiling her paper. The remaining candidates look at each other uneasily, realizing just how one small mistake can disqualify them. A young man, later nicknamed White, suggests that they might be allowed to talk to each other since the invigilator did not mention it among the rules. He suggests that they have to work together to figure out what the question is, and they agree. He also assigns nicknames to each one of the group based on their appearance, himself as white, black, brown, brunette, blonde, dark, and deaf. The nicknames stick, and they start to refer to each other this way. The group then starts discussing ways to uncover the question. Brunette suggests that it might be written on the paper, and they need something to reveal it, like a light. They place their papers against the light on the wall, but nothing shows. Blonde notices horizontal light tubes built into the wall and thinks they might be emergency lights, so they try to create an emergency to trigger them by breaking the main lights. The room plunges into darkness, and then blue lights, possibly ultraviolet, flicker on. They immediately expose their papers to the lights. When that doesn't help, they break the tubes, triggering infrared lights to turn on, but that doesn't work either. Frustration builds as their efforts yield no results. White suggests that if the light does not trigger anything, maybe liquid will, though this experiment would spoil their papers and get them disqualified. However, he remembers the Asian girl who was previously disqualified and decides to use her paper instead. He urinates on it, but nothing happens. Meanwhile, Def notices something on the paper and tries to tell the others to just look at it to see the question, but they don't understand him since he only speaks French. Brown, a professional gambler, suggests that this is a game and the company's board is watching them from behind the wall, betting on who will win. Dark, on the other hand, reveals that she has some knowledge about the company and its products. This revelation makes the others suspicious of her, especially Brown, who believes she is a spy planted by the company to test them. Tensions escalate, and the candidates begin to turn on each other. Brunette makes a bold move, cautiously approaching the guard. She searches his pockets and finds a lighter. She comes up with a plan to trigger the fire alarm, hoping that the sprinklers on the ceiling release some special fluid that might reveal something on the paper. She climbs onto a table to reach the fire alarm but can't quite get high enough. White rolls up a piece of paper and hands it to her. She lights it and holds it closer to the fire alarm. She triggers the sprinklers successfully, and water pours down on them like rain. Black finds out that it is just regular water, and it doesn't reveal anything. Meanwhile, Brunette notices that her paper is missing. It turns out that White gave her her own paper, which is now spoiled. She realizes what happened and that it was White who betrayed her. She is now disqualified and removed from the room. The others are shocked by White's betrayal, and they begin to distrust him. As the timer continues to go down, they turn their attention to Def as they hear him crying, the man who has been mostly quiet throughout the test. He starts arranging small pieces of glass on his paper, trying to get them to notice something on it. But instead, White bullies him into tearing his paper and eating it, leading to Def's disqualification. The guard escorts him out, leaving the remaining candidates to know even more about his true intentions. White's behavior becomes increasingly manipulative. He claims to have figured out the question, but when Black asks him to reveal it, he refuses. This infuriates Black, who punches White and knocks him unconscious. With Brown's help, he places him on the chair and ties him up. That way, he won't be much of a distraction when he wakes up. As he regains consciousness, he pleads for his medication, a pill he needs to take every hour. Black searches his pockets but can't find it. Someone has taken it. Without the pill, White passes out again. Dark becomes the focus of the suspicion. Brown, holding on to his belief that she's part of the company's test, takes her by surprise and ties her to the chair to interrogate her. Dark denies being a spy. She admits that she works for the company, but insists she doesn't know anything about the test they're undergoing. Brown doesn't believe her and thinks the only way to make her confess everything she knows is to torture her. He grabs a piece of paper and threatens to cut her thigh, but to his surprise, he notices she already has scars there. He asks her what the purpose of the exam is. When he fails to get the answer, he then makes a shallow cut on her thigh without hesitation. Black intervenes, trying to stop Brown, but Brown knocks him to the ground, leaving him breathless. Taking it even further, he attempts to cut her eye as well to force her to confess. Dark looks terrified, but she still denies knowing anything. At this point, Brown is convinced that she's telling the truth and finally lets her go. Blonde offers Dark a piece of plastic plaster to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, White's condition worsens, becoming increasingly erratic. He starts convulsing and reveals that he needs his medication to prevent any further complications. Blonde thinks he's faking it, but Black doesn't, knowing his wife has gone through a similar situation, and they need to give him the pill as soon as possible. But the pill is missing, and they need to find it first. They begin inspecting each other, but they don't find anything. Dark suspects Brown, noticing him chewing gum. She asks if he has one more, but he says no. She looks under his table and finds the pill stuck there with his gum. While she's trying to give it to White, Brown stops her, causing the pill to fall into the drain. They try to recover it, but they can't reach it because the drain holes are too narrow. Suddenly, they realize that White has stopped convulsing. He is lapsing. While Dark is carrying him out for treatment, he starts bleeding, and in a moment of desperation, she turns to the blank screen on the wall and asks for help. Her attempt to speak to the invigilator leads to her disqualification, and the guard escorts her out of the room, leaving only White, Black, Brown, and Blonde. Meanwhile, Blonde manages to recover the pill from the drain using a bobby pin, and as soon as she forces it into White's mouth, he regains consciousness and quickly resumes his manipulative tactics. The others ask him to reveal the question he claimed to know. He smirks and says that there is no question. The test itself is the question, and they are the answers. Brown recalls that there is only one answer, which means only one of them can qualify. Black notices White looking at the guard's gun and immediately understands his intention. They race to grab it, but Black takes the lead and gets it. However, when he pulls the trigger on White, nothing happens. The gun doesn't fire. White tries to take it back, but they get into a fight. White overpowers Black and stabs him with a pencil on his shoulder. Brown intervenes to help Black, but he fails. White takes the gun and tries to shoot them, but again, the gun fails to fire. White quickly figures out that the gun has a fingerprint ID and can only be fired by the guard, so he places it in the guard's hand. With the gun now seemingly functional, he threatens the others, demanding they leave the room so he can be the last one standing. Brown, terrified, is the first to leave. Blonde follows, but as she steps out, she shouts, "Lights out!" The room plunges into darkness, giving Black a chance to retaliate. In the chaos of the darkness, Black tries to stop White, but the latter, panicked, fires random shots. One of them hits Black on the chest, and he falls to the ground. Then, White notices that Blonde has not fully left the room. One of her feet remains partially inside. As he approaches her, the timer goes off. Believing he's won, White shouts to the invigilator on the other side of the wall. However, to his despair, the time hasn't yet expired, meaning he is now disqualified for speaking to the invigilator. He then realizes that Def had adjusted the timer before leaving. As he looks at Black's lifeless body, it dawns on him that everything he did was in vain. In a moment of despair, he tries to shoot himself, but once again, the gun refuses to fire unless held by the guard. Just then, the timer officially runs out, and the glass wall suddenly lights up, revealing the silhouette of the invigilator. And then, the guard escorts White out of the room. With only Blonde remaining, she re-enters the room and picks up Def's glasses along with a piece of broken glass, using them as a magnifier to inspect her paper. As she examines it more closely, she spots something almost invisible, a tiny watermark that reads, "Question 1, with nothing written in front of it, which means there is no question. She approaches the invigilator and says, "No," referring to the invigilator's earlier question, "Are there any questions?" asked at the beginning of the exam. The invigilator congratulates Blonde and offers her the job. He then introduces Def, the disqualified candidate, who is, in fact, the founder of the company. He is a troubled scientist who has developed a revolutionary pill capable of eradicating viruses and other stubborn mutations. Blonde, however, tells the invigilator that she may not accept the job. The invigilator questions why she went through so much trouble if she didn't want the position. Blonde cites the brutality of the test and questions whether it is important enough to kill for. The invigilator looks at Black and reveals that he is not dead. The bullet that struck him contained a fast-healing pill. Blonde approaches Black and finds out that he is actually alive and breathing, and his wound has already begun to heal. The invigilator explains that the fast-healing pill can only be produced in limited quantities. Therefore, the new administrator must be wise, compassionate, and able to make decisions under pressure. As she watches Black regain consciousness, Blonde changes her mind. She accepts the job offer and steps into her role as the company's new administrator. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.